Salad Podcast. I'm your host, Christian. This week we've got my good friend on, James Johnson. James, you've been in the Johnson family, and had your business going for quite a while. In fact, you went to Alaska at an early age of like 11 and picked up a camp, etc. And you guys have the Nac-Nac Camp, and then you have the Katmai Trophy Lodge, which I fished. It's been a fantastic fishery for me. And I think this week, what I would really like to talk about is getting over the misconception that when you go to Alaska, it's like Western fly fishing and it's dry fly season, because it's a misconception of most anglers, to be honest with you. And I want to help overcome that. The next thing I want to talk about is you talked to me earlier about a tip you had on moving as an angler. So we're going to talk about that at the end of the show. Real quick, before we get started, everyone, please leave us a review, like us on Apple. That helps us out a ton. Also, go check me out on the web at www.ffipodcast.com. That's www.ffipodcast.com. We've got all kinds of blog entries going in there, information from all the trips I've been having, etc. And then you can also enter into all kinds of different things for discounts on trips to where we're now running dry fly clinics, etc. So tune into that. Back to you, James. What I would say is, let's do a quick intro so everybody knows who you are. I mean, you have these lodges and stuff, but let's use this example. You just got back from New Zealand and Cuba, so you're an all-around angler. You used to have a lodge in Belize. Tell us a little bit about how you've kind of come up and into the fly fishing world.
First off, thanks for having me. It's good catching up. It's been too long.
Yeah.
So anyway, I grew up in Michigan, and before I was born, my family had a big Orvis lodge there on the Pere Marquette River. So I grew up fishing that. I think I caught my first steelhead on my own, just wading out from the house when I was 4. And my first trip to Alaska was when I was 11. We did a family road trip up. We drove up from Michigan in a motorhome, pulling a drift boat. Big adventure. We stopped at Yellowstone. It was August. The elk were bugling. You know, we caught some cutthroat. It was such a great experience. We ended up spending 6 weeks bouncing around the Kenai Peninsula, the Denali, Talkeetna, and all that stuff. And man, I totally fell in love with it. It was like the coolest thing that I could imagine doing as an 11-year-old kid. And that next year, we ended up purchasing some cabins on a river up there, the Nac-Nac River. And so I've spent every summer up there since I was 12, 2006.
Okay. So quite a bit of experience.
Yeah, I've been doing that for a long time. And, outside of that, I mean, fishing and hunting is kind of just what we do. Like, I can't even imagine taking a trip that wasn't to do one of those things. I think just fall after the Alaska season, we fished, we flats fished in Australia. We spent 2 weeks doing a DIY thing in New Zealand, and we did Belize down in southern Belize.
Okay.
And then we just got back a few days ago from a hosted trip to Cuba.
Oh wow, very cool, very cool. And I saw some of the footage. Obviously, you guys had a lot of success in each location. Especially given weather and whatnot. Yeah. So very cool. So let's do this. I think the average angler that starts to look at Alaska has that Alaskan dream, right? I'm going to go to Alaska. They've probably seen some images, and images were probably more so portrayed on fish or on dry fly fishing. And as I expressed, there's this misconception that that's the rule. I'm going to go to Alaska and it's going to be a lot like Western fly fishing, but you've been so privy to it, and I've been privy enough to it to understand that that's not necessarily true. So can you kind of talk about the differences between that?
Yeah, it's really kind of its own animal. I mean, there's no place in the world that's quite like it. To some extent, Kamchatka is similar to parts of Alaska. It's not really very similar to our part of Alaska. Our part's especially unique because we have so many large lakes that most of the trout that we're seeing are migratory trout that are coming out of those various lakes. And as opposed to being, like the West, where you're getting pre-runoff, you got summer patches, and then you get a little, streamer season kind of in the spring and the fall. We're pretty much getting like early June. We're starting with post trout spawn. The river's all open up after the spawn. And that's mostly streamer fishing. Like people think that they're going to be out there dry fly fishing for 30-inch rainbows. And the reality of it is those big fish in particular, you're never catching them. You're never catching on a dry, and you're almost never catching them on a nymph. It's a streamer game.
Yeah. So they're carnivorous at that point of that size. And when you're streamer fishing, are you guys primarily, doing that on a swing? Or are you, stripping streamers and fishing more of the tribs and things like that?
Yeah, kind of a combination of both. In the spring and summertime, it's mostly like a single hand strip swing game. We're fishing a lot more riffles and boulders and drop offs and stuff than you would be like Western trout fishing. So you're not just throw it out, strip, throw it out, strip. It's more of like a strip pause. Okay, feed it into that rock, move it a little bit.
Okay.
And then as you go into fall, then after the eggs are in, it's mostly like two-handed rods, swinging flies, steelhead style.
Okay. And with those, maybe it's both. They're the same, but maybe they're different. But are you fishing floating lines, or are you doing more of a sinking line and trying to get really deep with those weighted flies, etc.?
Yeah, we have such a wide variety of rivers that we're fishing in Alaska. Like in general, like sometimes you're fishing a creek that's 30 feet wide, and you're fishing a floating line. You're fishing like woolly bugger type, cone head, small flies. That's when you hear about mousing, like those are the types of places that you're typically mousing, and usually those smaller streams, you're looking at smaller fish, like depending upon the river that you're 20 inches is a big one, might be a really big one. And then those extra large fish that you're seeing photos of in Alaska are mostly all coming from rivers. They're coming from the Nac-Nac, they're coming from the Kvichak, and they're coming from the Kenai. And if those fish are being caught on streamers, it's always going to be on a sink tip. A lot of those fish are also coming during the salmon spawn on beads and flesh flies.
Yep. Yeah, and that's been the season I've been coming up in September when we're fishing beads. So talk a little bit that you talked, June, July-ish, etc. What's the real big first run that occurs and kind of switches off of streamers onto whatever it is, eggs or flesh?
Yeah. So our first run of salmon rivers for the most part are kings, and they're one of the earlier ones to spawn. But in a lot of the smaller streams, it's really like pinks and comes. And even though they don't come in before the kings, they're close enough, and those fish hit the river and spawn a lot quicker. So you'll start to see egg drops in some of the creeks behind spawning pinks, comes, and kings, and like the middle of July.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. And everyone, hang in there. I know we've got a little bit of a cutout on sound on James, but we're working through it. That's pretty common, as you guys know, with a lot of our guests where we're recording from remote locations, and it's hard for them to get good access, etc. So I appreciate the patience. So now you get in through that season. Do you have a lot of fly fishermen that are coming up for kings and things like that, or are those primarily kind of catch and keep people that you're dealing with in that scenario?
Yeah, so Alaska statewide, I would say definitely spin fishing. As far as for us, the vast majority of the season we're fly fishing. Now we'll do the most spin fishing that we do is guys that want to bring home silvers.
Okay.
We'll throw spinners and jigs and that kind of stuff. It just makes it a lot easier for most people to catch enough salmon to bring home. It's also pretty common that in July, even with like your purist trout fishermen from the West, when you're up that time of year and you got millions of sockeye salmon swimming by, that those guys will want to, catch some sockeye, bring it home, and give it to the family, feed the wife, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's awesome. I've taken home fish.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that I've always seen about it is you get home with Alaska fish, everyone wants to be your friend. First of all, in the States. Second of all, it is like an incredible barter opportunity for someone to use. So if you want to barter for goods, I mean, man, you can like get construction work done. I've had my roof shoveled for it, so all kinds of stuff here.
Yeah. That's great. I mean, there's nothing better than some wild caught fish. And I mean, as far as health and taste, I mean, that blows, buying fish at Costco out.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's a whole nother world. Although I always laugh when we come up and it's it's salmon night at the lodge. And the guides are like, oh, salmon night. You're like, why would they not like salmon? Then you realize, oh, they eat this every week. They're kind of over it.
Yeah, we almost don't. We've almost never had a guy that midway through the season will eat salmon on salmon night. They will, but if brats are an option or like hot dogs, man, they're eating a hot dog.
Yeah, that's too funny. That's too funny. Okay, so what comes next in the season then?
Yeah, so we have the king salmon run, followed by the sockeye salmon run, and then chums. The pinks run in there with the chums every other year. And then our fifth and final salmon is the silver salmon. Those fish run in August.
Okay, and then do you run flesh on any of those fish as well after they come through, or is that primarily an egg approach on the front end?
Yeah. Not really on the front end. It's really when they start to die and they're decomposing, and that's when we're fishing flesh. And the exception to that is if you're in a river that has a lot of bears, or if you're on a river where there's people cleaning a lot of fish. And in those cases, there's flesh in the water, and flesh can be very productive.
Okay. And what's your favorite through those seasons?
Man, I always used to say fall trout, but these days I'd say probably the past 5 or 6 years I like the king salmon fishing the best.
Why is that? Is it the power of the fish and?
Yeah, the weather's nice.
Yeah, weather's nice.
That's a big thing.
September can be tough. It's hit or miss. I will admit.
Yeah, I've fished enough days and 40-degree rain over my years that doesn't get me as excited as it used to.
All right.
But it has a lot of the same aspects as hunting trophy trout, where you're fishing and you might catch a 18-inch jack, which is a king that only here in the ocean is also coming up and on and dying. And then your next fish might be a 30-pounder. So you just never know what you're going to get. We're doing a lot of strip and flies for it, which is a lot of fun. I mean, it's kind of like mega brown trout fishing. You're throwing an 8-9 weight rod, and instead of catching a 18-inch fish that you strip in, you hook a 20-30 pound king. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's got to be like a bolt of lightning. I mean, just tearing off.
Yeah, they're so strong.
Yeah, even the kings that we fish for in New York, I mean, they get pretty big, but not like the size you're seeing. And man, when you get one that's hot. They're just totally different fish. Man, I used to guide in Michigan, on the Great Lakes, and I did when I was a kid, a lot of salmon fishing, and I guided a lot of salmon fishing as a young adult. And they're just not the same. I mean, the kings in Alaska are so much more aggressive. I mean, you flap a pink fly in there sometimes. And you'll see chrome kings race up trying. I mean, it's insane. And then they hammer it. They're just so aggressive. Yeah, and it seems like they would just be kind of that much more built with horsepower after coming out of the salt, and
they're meaner.
The tide and current and everything else. Like I mean, you see it when you switch from fresh water to salt water as the first time, and I remember the ferociousness of a fish, it changes. And then the overall power and run capability. I mean, I remember my first trip down to your place, actually, your old place, the Blue Bonefish in Belize, I caught my first bonefish. And it was like a, I don't know, 16-inch, 18-inch bonefish. And it was like in my backing. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, I thought this big fish. And then you get it in and you're like, dude, that looks like a trout. It looks like a whitefish. What is going on here? And this is a whole nother game.
It is.
It is. Game.
I'll always remember my first bonefish, man. I think I was 16, and Dad and I were doing a DIY bonefish trip on Andros Island in the Bahamas. We were wading around. I mean, it was the second day. The first day it was cold and windy, and we saw some. They wouldn't bite. And the second day the school came swimming by. There was maybe 20 fish swimming up the edge of the flat. Right out in front of them, strip. Hooked this fish, and it was a nice bonefish. It was probably 4 pounds, and it took off running, and it went, 100 feet into my backing. I was like, man, this is like the coolest thing.
Yeah, it is. It's so funny because even as an adult, you feel like a kid. Like, what is going on? This is too cool. Yeah. And then you reel it in and get it in. And you're like, man, as a trout angler, you're just like, I just don't understand. It doesn't seem like that would do that, but let's get another one, and then you're hooked. It's over. It's over
there. Yeah.
So you come in the fall. Let's get back to Alaska. You come in the fall, the sockeye run. You're now in September, and you're starting to fish those heavy, like you said, lake run rainbows. They're coming out of the big lakes. That's where you're getting these big residents. Explain how that kind of works. Maybe just talk about what your scenario is at the Nac-Nac, because I think it's understanding that they're coming out of the lake. That's really important. Am I not correct?
Yeah, for sure. Kind of what we're getting in the fall is similar to a steelhead run in a lot of ways, or a migratory rainbow thing. The difference is our fish kind of move throughout their life cycle. Like you get a steelhead, they go out to the ocean. They spend 3 years there. They swim back in the river. They spawn. They go back out to the ocean. And there's a little more. To it. For the most part, that's it. Our trout will be in the river. This big, then maybe in the river, 19, 20 inches, back in the lake, and they just kind of bounce back and forth. But for the most part, a lot of those bigger fish spend the majority of the year in the lake. They're in there for the spring spawn, and then they're in there for that fall feeding before ice up.
Okay. And those rainbows, how far are they running out? Are they running all the way out to where you get that salt mixture, or going into the salt, or are they staying further up into the water closer to the lakes?
Yeah. They typically don't go down in any place where you see tide swing. They will in certain places in Alaska, and obviously there's parts of Alaska that get steelhead runs as well. It'd be crazy to say that in our part of Alaska, no trout ever goes to saltwater. But they don't typically, like, people say things like they've caught trout with sea lice on them, but in our part of the world, we have these little lake parasites that are on their fins that look kind of like
lice.
But it's not a sea lice. I've caught as many rainbow trout out of Bristol Bay as anybody in the world. I've never seen an actual sea lice. So that's a good indication to me that they just don't regularly do it, and if they do, they get back into the river really quick. And my theory on that is that bay is cold, it's muddy, it's shallow, and it's filled with predators. Especially in that late spring, early summertime, when those small trout would be migrating out, it's just not very suitable. Typically, places where you're getting steelhead runs, that ocean's just a lot more hospitable.
Yeah, a lot harder to survive and make it to the next year.
Yeah.
Now, that same time of year I've been up there, we fished for other species. We fished for char, et cetera, et cetera. Talk about what the availability there is and how you guys go about that too.
Yeah, the number of species that Alaska gets is incredible, and in a rarity in this day and age, they're all native. We don't get any planted fish. We don't have any introduced fish. They're all wild native fish. And the species that we will target in our area, but are available in a lot of other parts of Alaska as well is the 5 species of salmon, starting with you got kings, sockeye, chums, pinks, silvers, or coho. You get rainbow trout. In some parts of Alaska, you get steelhead. We have Dolly Varden, Arctic char. Those are different fish.
Yeah.
Grayling, northern pike, lake trout. And so the species diversity is incredible.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've been up there when a few of the guys have gone out and done some pike fishing and stuff, and it's always been pretty interesting to me what you guys have available right there on the Nac-Nac. Maybe talk a little bit about where you guys are located and why it's different, because from what I've seen is what I really like about your lodge is Alaska is a unique weather place. If you fly in there and you want to do flyouts, which most people want to do, they want to go get some Dolly Varden or they want to go get some char or whatever it is on a flyout or just experience a new location. But because of the weather, and I think this is advice you or your father gave to me, which was if you want to fly out, take the first fly out available because you don't know when the weather is going to change. And what I always loved about that was if you did get the fly out, it was fantastic. But if you didn't, you still had the Nac-Nac to go fish, which is an incredible river in itself. And then all the tribs that are on that you can go fish, and you can go fish for different things as well, pike or other salmon, et cetera, et cetera. Talk a little bit about your location and how your approximation is to those different types of things.
Yeah, I mean, we're very fortunate. I mean, I say fortunate, but it's intentional. We have an incredibly vast fishery that we can access almost no matter what the weather is. So without getting in a float plane, we could fish a different river every single day. We could basically we could fish for a different species every single day without ever getting on a plane. And then when the weather allows it, which gosh, some weeks Alaska is notoriously horrible. So some weeks you might only have a day or two where flyouts are actually safely available. And so we have that option to where we can jump in a float plane and fly out and add another 15, 20 destinations to the list.
That's really cool. I mean, I can recall my buddies, Todd, who you know well, and a handful of other buddies coming up, and they had like 7 days of sun. And they were like, it's awesome. And being a climber myself, and I was like, man, I think you guys were pretty lucky. The weather's not usually like that. And they're like, you gotta go. And it was like the next season we got absolutely hammered. I think we were able to get one fly out in, and had to cancel the others. And
man,
that seemed to me like it was more common, right?
Well, I mean, kind of in between is the norm. Usually you'll get. Yeah, it depends upon the time. July, the weather's typically pretty nice, excluding this July. But typically, July, the weather's nice. It's sunny. It's 65 to 75 most days. We've had quite a few years where it's it's sunny and you could fly every single day, the whole month. But now you get into August, September, and that's not true. That's not true anymore. Like reasonably. You're flying 4 or 5 days a week. You can fly. But some weeks, it's like you said. I mean, a couple days can be all that's on the table.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why having phenomenal home fishing is super important. I think.
Yeah, and in Nac-Nac, from my perspective, I mean, there's fishing all the way up and down. And what I found last time was really cool was, we were able to fish beads, but we were also able to swing down lower and be successful and, do all kinds of different fishing, even though it was just the same river. You're not like kind of stuck to one method or another or one zone. Always seems like there's plenty of room, et cetera. I mean, of course, as a guide, there's never enough room, but, as an angler, it's like, oh, there's got to be fish over there too. So. Really cool.
And even as far as that goes, like when you were there, that's one of the more limited time of the year. I mean, it's a great time of year to go fishing, but as far as variety, earlier in the year, you get more variety, more places are fishing good. There's more species available.
Yeah. Yeah, I would assume so. You're right, because of the weather changes, the different runs, etc. I
Yeah.
really like I really like fishing those smaller rivers and stuff and having that as a viable option. And what I really liked is we brought up a group, and it gave us the ability for all of us to kind of do what we wanted to do that day. It wasn't like you were just stuck with one species that everybody's going to have to go fish after, which can be super fun as a group. But also, you might have a group that's like, man, I want to throw streamers today. Oh, I don't really care. I'm looking for my 30-incher, or, I want to go, swing a double hand, and I don't really have the practice on that, or I want to learn it, or whatever it is. So some really cool options for you guys to have. Now you have two camps too, right? You have the Katmai Trophy Lodge, which is a full lodge setting, all independent by itself. But then you also have the Nac-Nac Camp, which is lodges, et cetera, in a food hall. Can you kind of describe the differences that you see as a consumer, and like who wants to go where, and why that might be the change?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the River Camp is our original lodge. That's the one that I grew up at. My parents still run that lodge themselves. My wife and I run Katmai Trophy Lodge since 2016. Purchased it in the spring of 2016. The lodge is like kind of your classic Alaska log lodge, very communal area. It's a little bit smaller, more intimate operation. And then the camp's a little bit bigger. It's 10 individual cabins, and then kind of a dining room lounge that's about 100 yards up the road away from the river there. Both are great experiences. The river camp gives you a little bit better access to the lake, and they do a little bit more fishing up in there and on the lake trips, where we're doing a little bit more river stuff and fly out. But essentially, it's the same fishing program.
Yeah. Yeah, from what I've seen, it seems very similar in nature. I mean, you're really pretty close.
Yeah, we're only 10 miles apart.
Yeah, and that's funny you say 10 miles, because it does not feel like 10 miles.
Yeah.
Since I've been there. So really cool. So you've got all these different scenarios that you've run on the different fish, etc. When you have guests, what are some of the things that you would provide as advice? Hey, look, you're coming up to the lodge, be ready for this or that you kind of see as things that people forget in the overall nature of fly fishing up there.
Yeah, that's a good question. We basically, as far as gear goes, we provide all the fishing gear needed. A lot of times people aren't necessarily real familiar with their gear, so being familiar with your gear that you bring in is very important. Polarized sunglasses, like people don't necessarily think of that being a thing in Alaska, because it's not the flats, it's not 80 degrees and sunny, but glasses for eye protection and also seeing fish is super important. And then physical fitness helps a lot. I mean, we get so many guys that come up that are retired, that 65, 70 years old, that are like, man, this is my bucket list trip. I really want to fly out to hike into this wilderness creek and wade around and catch Dolly Varden or whatever, and just really struggle on the hiking and the wading. So as far as incorporating, especially if you're a little bit older, a little bit of walking, a little bit of cardio, and then like a little bit of strength training with stability, I think can really up the quality of your trip.
Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree. I didn't really think of the physical side of it, because you probably have I would assume you have a couple type of customers that you deal with. One would be, I'm the angler that doesn't really fish, but I've always wanted to go to Alaska.
Yeah.
Then you have the total opposite, which is the core angler who maybe has fished Alaska, fished all over the place, and they like, man, I know what I'm doing. You're really kind of just pushing them along per se, right?
Mhm.
Let's go here, let's go there. And then you probably have that retiree ground, I would assume, which is they probably have some fishing experience, etc., but they've always wanted to go. They finally got there, but now they're not as fit as they used to be. Those are the three groups I would kind of see. Is that fair to say that?
Yeah, it is fair. So like in the summer, we get a lot of family groups. That's really common in the summer. We'll get like, you come up and you bring your wife and your 14-year-old daughter or something. That's a phenomenal time of year for that trip. The weather's nice. You got some good easy salmon fishing. You go into a creek, catch a bunch of dollies. As you get in the early and late season, it's mostly younger, middle-aged, hardcore guys like yourself. People that are into it, that fish quite a bit, and are at least average to quite good.
Yeah.
And then kind of mixed in both seasons, you get a lot of those guys that are, and I'm saying 60s because a lot of them are in their 60s and 70s, but even in your 50s, if you start to let that physical fitness slip, it's not to say that you can't fish, because there are still, we're lucky enough to have phenomenal fishing that you can do. Like you could fish out of a jet boat with a knee brace and a seat and a backrest every day.
Yeah.
But if you're wanting to fly out and hike around in some of those wilderness streams and fish a 5 or 6 weight, or if you want to go mousing because you saw a video of somebody mouse fishing in Alaska, you got to be able to wade, you got to be able to cover water, and you got to be able to hike.
Yeah, and to give you guys some perspective too, on my trip, we had 2 guys that were in their 70s, and they fished fine. And we were in there in September, which is it was a hard year. The weather's tough. You don't know if it's going to snow one day or rain or, be beautiful. So it'd be tough. And we did flyouts and everything. And then myself, being a cancer survivor, my first trip up there, I wasn't very strong. Still, I felt, I'm 47 years old, but I felt like I was, old. My legs weren't very strong, etc. But the little bit of hiking that I did at home, even just walking around the neighborhood, boy, it made so much of a difference going there. Like you said, being able to cross a couple streams just to get to the location, or, back and forth to the beaver, not being overwhelmed, etc. It's a big difference because, after 3-4 days, it starts to wear on you as an angler. So I think that's great advice. Let's do this. We're about wrapped up on the show here, but I want to talk about your tip that you covered, and that's the move in when you're fishing, and how often we see that angler with the rigor mortis of the legs that's kind of just hanging out in one zone, repeating, and they're not having success. And what you see as the correct thing to do, and why that's so important.
Yeah, I would say that, gosh, almost everybody doesn't move enough. Or when I say that, I mean they spend too much time fishing where there's not fish, and then not as much time fishing where there is fish. So let's say that you're in a crystal clear trout stream, and that doesn't matter if you're in New Zealand or Montana or Alaska. Cover water until you see fish, and then fish those fish. If it might be rising fish, if you're on the Depews and Livingston. If you're in Alaska, a lot of times you're going to look for spawning salmon. You look behind those spawning salmon, you cast to the fish. If you can't see very well, like the light's not good, maybe you're just having a hard time seeing in those rivers, look at the type of places that you've already caught fish. And then focus on areas that look like that. Maybe there's really fast current, and then there's kind of a medium pace current and a slow current. You fish the medium current on that drop-off line behind the salmon. You throw a cast there. If you don't catch a fish, throw 3 or 4 feet farther, move 3 or 4 feet downstream. Now, obviously, if you're on a guided trip, your guide will help you, but a lot of times there's 2 anglers, 1 guide. And so when the guide's not with you, you're kind of on your own. So some form of self-sufficiency is super important. The same thing would go if it's a bigger river and you're not going to be able to see fish. If you're just fishing a flat, take 2 or 3 steps every cast. Throw it out, swing your fly down through, no bite, 2 or 3 steps. Same thing. Fishing a mouse, hit the bank, skate it out. Okay, there's a little log jam 4 feet down. Hit the log jam, skate it out. Those types of things are going to drastically increase the amount of fish that you catch, as opposed to just standing in the same spot, throwing your bead, 11 o'clock, command, and float down. That's great. Once.
Right.
Keep moving.
I agree. It's so funny because I had literally yesterday had the same conversation with Trent over at Fly Life Media. It's flylifeproductions.com if you guys want to check that out. But we talked about the concept of always looking for new water. And when you say that to someone, often they think new water means a whole nother location. And in fact, like you were talking about with the mouse, it's new water means 3 feet to the right or 3 feet to the left or further upstream or further downstream or whatever it is. But, you know, when you start making that same cast, that same 11 o'clock cast, boom, dropping the bobber in, you're not changing your weight. You're not changing your depth of your bobber. All those little things, that's where it becomes, in my opinion, really problematic because it's like, I'm fishing the same exact thing over and over again. Why would I think it would change? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're doing different things to maybe get the better drift, you can tell my drift isn't right. That's a little bit of a different story. But at the same standpoint, once you get 1 or 2 drifts in there, it's like, okay, let's go try something else and go somewhere else and do something else. And I see it, especially here in Utah. We have the Provo River right down the road. It's probably 30 minutes away. And I would assume a lot of the concern is people get into a hole. They start to fish the hole. They don't necessarily know and understand what the substrate is doing, so where the fish are, but they know there are fish somewhere in there. What they don't do is go outside of the standard cast that they made, 1, and 2, they have a fear of leaving. And if I leave, someone else is going to get in here and I might not be able to get in somewhere else. And the way I always looked at it was, what does it do to stay there anyhow if you're not catching fish? Like, go somewhere else, try something different. You know, maybe you learn something, whatever, along the way. And I think that's my best advice.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. And, you know, so like you're saying, you're fishing a run, you're unfamiliar with the run, but somebody told you that this is a good area. It looks nice. It's got everything setting up like you'd want it to in a trout stream. Just don't keep doing the same thing. Fish out the run. If you don't know where they're going to be sitting in the run, fish the inside of the run, fish the middle of the run, fish the outside of the run, move down the run.
Fish
that little
mid-column.
seam. Oh yeah, maybe I'm not getting down enough. Right. Make sure you're down. Even if you're going to do that, you're going to change tactics. I would fish through that run until you decided that this isn't going to work. And even if you were going to fish the run again, you're better off short to long, or just continuing downstream, re-rigging. While you're doing that, you're resting the upper pool or the far side of the pool, or however it's set up, however you fished it. Yep. And you go back up, and you can give that run another chance. It's rested.
It's a new tactic.
Got a new technique, new tactic. Yep. But the whole time, I'd classify that as moving, because you're working through the run, you're working inside to out, you're working down. Okay, now I'm sitting again. It's been a half an hour since I was go hit it again.
Yeah, and I like how you pointed out that you do consider that as moving.
Yeah,
because
I think you can fish the same run all day. I mean, I'm not patient enough to do that, but you could fish the same, 100-foot long run all day. I would still want to see you move.
Yeah, and like you said, when you go up or down the river or move, essentially where you were, you're resting that, and you're coming back and you're getting a reset, hopefully.
Hopefully.
Some great tips. Yeah, hopefully. Exactly. Well, I can't tell you, man, it's been incredible. My trips to Katmai Trophy Lodge, the service has always been great. I know you and I have talked about this off camera, but it's been a fantastic lodge and experience for me. It was my first Alaska experience, so it's a special place in that nature. And I'll never forget, and this is an incredible story, but my partner and I, Todd, who fished together a lot up there, the 2 times that I've been up to your lodge, your wife has doubled us up on incredible fish on the last run of the day. The first year I got the like 28 and Todd got the 30 something, and then the next year I got the 30 something and he got the 28. So we're even for now. I have to maybe tip her a little better next year to get ahead of them.
Yeah, she's a heck of a guy. It probably wouldn't have been your last run if you hadn't doubled up on those fish.
Say that again.
I said it probably wouldn't have been your last run if you hadn't doubled up on those fish, man. She does not like to end it on a slow note.
Oh no. It was too funny. The last time we were there, we literally shot up to the run. It's you stop at like where there's an overhang bush and you throw your bobbers in, right? And I'm not kidding you. We threw our bobbers in, and it couldn't have been more than 3 seconds, and we doubled. And Todd and I pulled out, and we both had 2 tiny little smolt on our lines. And we're like, we doubled. We're crying. All 3 of us are crying. We're laughing so hard. So of course we fired up, head back up again, and it was that run. Todd hooked up early, and those guys had a good fish, and I just sat in the back like, come on. I got one, and I remember saying, Sage, I got one too, and her being like, yeah, you got a really nice one up here. And I'm like, no, it's really big. And then that's when we all started kind of giving the holy smokes, let's get them both on the land quick. That was really cool.
Yeah,
but thanks again for having us, man, and for being on the show, sharing all that you know up there. We're going to get you back. We're going to talk saltwater because I know you love saltwater, and there's a lot more technique to learn there as well from you. So thanks again, everyone, for tuning in. It's the Katmai Trophy Lodge, the KTM Lodge, as you've heard it. And tune in. We'll have notes in the show. You can always call me or contact me through the blog, and I'll get you set up there as well. Thanks, James.
Thank you.
We'll see you.